All right, good evening, everyone. Sean, are we ready to
You can.
get back on track?
I never make any definitive statements.
Sure. Oh, you mean because
Robert and Catherine, yeah.
Sure, sure.
Exactly.
Okay, so Sean, we're ready to go? All right, so we have already convened this second meeting of 2020, January 21st, and we welcome everyone. And we are beginning our meeting. We always are happy to do with some swearing-ins. And I think I get to do the first two, Mayor Pam, and then you're going to do our chaplains. So I'm going to have Bob and Catherine come up to the front. And
I need the cheat sheet.
commission swearing. All right, so I'm going to have you guys raise a hand, right or left, whatever you prefer, and repeat after me. I solemnly affirm
I
solemnly
solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws of the United States
And will obey the laws of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio.
that I will, in all respects,
That I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the
provisions of the Charter
and ordinances of the
And
Village of Yellow
ordinances.
Springs,
and ordinances of the
Of the
Village
Yellow
of Yellow Springs,
Springs,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of
and will
will
faithfully
discharge the duties of the office of the
Human Relations
Environmental
Commission.
Commission.
Human Relations Commission.
Awesome. All right, and welcome Catherine,
Thanks.
welcome Bob. All right, and actually, we have a bonus. Yes, we have our new village pins, and you guys are going to be the first amongst many recipients of these. And I just heard the what's from the back there. So you guys also. Yes.
Oh, awesome.
So, yes,
Oh,
to all
nice.
council members.
Oh, man.
Yes.
This is worth it.
That's right, yes, we
I did, I
are.
noticed that
I
already.
know Josue already has one, Judy,
Thank
here you
you.
go.
Good
All
job.
right.
Nice.
God forbid, vintage Yellow Springs.
Thanks.
Bob Partita. Bob Partita, Relations Commission.
All right,
All right.
so, yeah, we are on track for 2020. All right, thank you guys. Welcome to the team. And I would love to have Mayor Pam Canine come up to swear in our new police chaplains.
All right. These chaplains.
I'm going to do you gentlemen one at a time, so Pastor Rick, can you come up first?
Sure.
Pastor Rick Jones being sworn in as police chaplain. Please raise your right hand, sir. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws of the United States
and obey the laws of the United States
and of the state of Ohio,
and of the state of Ohio.
that I will in all respects
And I will in all respects
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the Charter
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of police chaplain.
the duties of police chaplain.
Next up, Pastor Bill Randolph, also being sworn in as police chaplain. Raise your right hand, sir. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Ohio,
and of the state of Ohio,
and that I will in all respects
and I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances
and the ordinances
of the Village of Yellow Springs,
of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of police chaplain.
the duties of police chaplain.
Thank you.
And I would love for Chief Carlson to come up and just talk about the significance of police chaplains for us.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening. Thanks, everyone. This is a very special moment for the police department. These will be our first police chaplains. Often throughout a peace officer's day, life, week, we encounter severe tragedy in human error and in natural disaster. It's difficult in a small department to facilitate and assist families grieving loved ones and friends, and accomplish the duties as a peace officer by law, in addition to consoling, helping families with arrangements, situations, requests of faith if need be. And Pastor Rick Jones from the Methodist Church and Pastor Bill Randolph from the Baptist Church have graciously accepted the responsibility in assisting the Yellow Springs Village, the Yellow Springs Police Department in those duties. I feel we are very blessed to have both of them on our staff. And if you have a chance, please visit when you can, get to know them. Their position with us has already been of great value over the holidays. So thank you for this.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Awesome.
The
Thank you
mayor is going to
both.
swear in Mariah as well.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Mariah's your new officer.
Yes.
It is my honor to swear in our latest officer, Mariah England. Why don't you step right around here so folks can see that spit polish? Raise your right hand, please. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and obey the laws of the United States
and obey the laws of the United States
and of the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and that I will in all respects
that I will in all respects
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the charter and ordinances
of the charter and ordinances
of the Village of Yellow Springs,
of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of police officer. The duties of the officer
the duties of the officer
of
She's just following you.
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of police officer.
of police officer.
He's already done something great.
I know. What a good start.
Hey, thank you. All right.
Go
Thank you, Mayor.
Go down the road.
Make it line.
All right.
Welcome, Mariah.
Yeah, this is excellent. And, you know, as Pastor Randolph is walking out the door, it's a nice segue into announcements.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Brian,
Yes.
if I may, Mariah's just joined the force, but I just want to recognize her courage and her willingness to go above the call of duty. Just recently, we received a call from the county on a reckless driver, and we didn't have much detail. Mariah was able to spot it on the road, followed the vehicle, and the person was incapable of sitting on the car. And thanks to Mariah, we were able to get one reckless driver off the road. So thank you, Mariah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad that you did that before she left. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Some other announcements. I just want to thank everyone, the Martin Luther King Jr. Day Steering Committee, for yet again an amazing celebration. The World House Choir was awesome. Thanks to Lisa. Kevin, were you in the mix?
I was not.
All right.
I'm on
But
hiatus from the choir.
yes, I know you were there in spirit. The music was great. The students were amazing. I couldn't believe, I mean, all of them, but those sixth graders blew me away. Really inspirational words. I, loved everything that Pastor Randolph had to say, and I appreciate the village's continued support of that activity. I know that we're going to be talking a little bit more about what it means for MLK Junior Day to be a signature event for the village, and making sure that we're supporting that in all ways that we can. Do we have other announcements?
Well, I want to announce that our village manager, this way, Selmaron, will be making a presentation at the McKee meeting tomorrow, Antioch Midwest, what room?
Room B105.
Room B105 at 11:30. Why don't you say
Sure.
what you'll be?
At the request of the James McKee Association, I will be speaking at room 105 tomorrow to talk about project updates with the state of the village. So I'll provide a presentation similar to what you'll see today on what we've done in infrastructure projects we have coming up in the future, our budget. There were some questions that some citizens have around our budget, and are we operating on a deficit? And if you haven't heard me say it before, one of the challenges in classifying whether we're operating in a deficit or not is that we combine our capital budget and our operating budget into one when they should be two separate budgets. Reason we save funds or we have reserves is to finance those capital improvements items that they're infrequent or they're one-off or they're investments. So we'll speaking on that, and we'll also speak on our 2020 budget. So
Thank you.
Okay.
And also, I want to announce again that the updated comprehensive land use plan process will be staged at Mills Lawn in the gym on the 23rd of this month from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. It's going to be an interactive session, I understand. There are going to be stations that have maybe like parking options for the village, village boundary options, housing, business, different things. So it's not going to be a sit down and listen. It's going to be going around and having an opportunity to interact at each of the stations, and I encourage people to attend.
Right. And so that is this Thursday, the 23rd. Any other announcements? All right, I want to mention two other things. And I guess these are kind of my personal things. So one is the second annual Fearless Forensic Festival. Our speech and debate tournament is happening this Saturday, and the community is welcome to come and see our middle school and high school speech and debaters doing amazing things. We've got about 300 students that are going to be in the village from everywhere from Columbus to Cincinnati. Laura, Lisa, Pam are going to be judging, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And the other thing I wanted to mention is tomorrow night, if you didn't hear, there's going to be an event talking about the Ohio Climate Ride, which is a bike ride to raise funds for awareness around climate change. They're doing their first ride in Ohio ever. And so at the brewery from 5:30 to 7, we're going to be learning more about what that ride is all about. So everyone's welcome.
Do they have the dates of the ride?
Yeah, it is June 4th to 7th, and the ride is from Columbus to Cleveland, and it culminates on National Trails Day, which is June 7th. So, and anyone that shows up tomorrow, I'll buy you a beer. So, all right. Any other announcements? All right, so we got 2 items on the consent agenda, and my understanding is that maybe one of them needs a amendment.
Yes, shall I say?
Sure,
So-
I think we can just do that and then approve it.
Yeah, it's just a word that needs to be omitted on the minutes from January 6th on the 4th page, and it's fairly near the bottom of the page. The company that is putting in telephone utility poles is Midwest, not Antioch Midwest. So Antioch could just be scratched.
Okay. So with that recommended amendment, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So I move that we approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Okay, so review of the agenda. Anything we need to change, add, etc.? Great. Then, Mary Ann, if you could walk us through the petitions and communications?
Yes. So Brian, you submitted, was it the application itself or just a preliminary draft
This was our phase 2.
for
Yes.
phase 2? Is it Robert Wood Johnson
Yep.
Foundation for Culture of Health submission? And Lisa Krieger and Cindy Seek and you were the authors of this, I guess?
Yes, and we should also give a shout out to Sean, who
Sean.
created a 4-minute video that stars Florence, who's not in here right now, as well as Anthony Fife. It's pretty cool.
Great. There is a communication from Emily Seibel with a request for a tap fee waiver for the senior apartment project that they're doing, and I would request that we put that on, not on the agenda for tonight,
Right.
but on the agenda for February 3rd.
Mhm.
Then Elise Burns had a report from the mayor's court, which included an annual report as well as highlights from the mayor. Chief Carlson submitted a narrative and accolades to Mariah England, which he just recently mentioned regarding the driver who was out of control and her apprehension of that person. Then there's one letter regarding complaints regarding rooster situation and a response letter from our staff regarding that same situation. Macy Reynolds from the Tree Committee, and it seemed like there were two.
Yes, Eric Oper.
Yeah, oh, that's right, they weren't together. Eric Goldberg, both had some letters regarding not the pickup of the Christmas trees, but how they might be better managed rather than burning them, and some issues regarding that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we really have no legislation, huh?
I know, it's uncanny,
That is a first
yeah.
in 6 years. All right. So with that, we will move to special reports, and I believe, Josue, you're gonna tell us all the great things that have been happening in the past
I
year.
am plugged
Okay,
right
great.
in. All right, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm looking to put up on the screen, and I will email you this as well. So give me a second while this cooperates with me. All right, here it is. This is the end of the year report. We have a lot of content to cover. If I miss anything, it's not because it's not important, it's just a lot of content, and I look forward to the individual department heads having an opportunity to come before council with a more thorough presentation of the great work that they and their teams have been doing. So on that, I would like to lead with the administration accomplishments. We prepared and presented the annual budget through the lens of operating levy needs and provide information to educate residents. As you notice, we have provided a lot more financial data and charts to better inform the council and the public on a more digestible format on where our budget and expenses are allocated. We updated and implemented a residential solar program for the village. We have 48 new residential solar systems installed. We've addressed sewer and stormwater issues. This is a long-term work in progress. I have a specific slide on this. We've done some work to formalize and advance the municipal broadband strategy. We've established this energy special improvement district process and templates, and we have that ready to go for any project that comes before us. We've worked on the Glass Farm Housing project and coordinated with the Housing Advisory Board and the ensuring that a conceptual design is included and incorporated in our upcoming comprehensive land use plan. There'll be an update on this at the open house on the 23rd at Mills Lawn at 6:30. We'll also work to ensure the comprehensive land use plan update reflects the priorities of the village. This includes conceptual design for parking and housing development on select sites. We've looked into developing a plan for paid parking. This coincides with our improvement on the parking assets. We've refined the investment policy and practices, and this includes our accounting. For 2020, we'll be moving into the GAAP accounting principles. Additionally, we've been able to reduce cost and increase revenues. This has been done by a combination of moving our banking services to a separate bank and making some improvements on our investment or management of investment funds. That's by hiring a consultant and having a new platform to be able to purchase securities. And these securities are primarily certificates of deposit.
And can we just stop there and talk about the return on investment that we've seen, I guess, this past
Correct.
year, and because it's impressive.
Correct. In your packet, there's a report, and it shows that we've had a return of over 164,000 from our investments. So yes, it's been the performance has increased over the years, and particularly this year. With this change in the investment policy and practice, we want to ensure that we continue to receive healthy returns from our investments. We see a changing marketplace. Just in this year, we reported that we saw a drop from 2.5 returns from our Star Ohio and Star Plus investments to down to 1.4 something. So we've seen that decline in returns this year. We're trying to plan against that and want to ensure that we're getting the most from our funds that we have in investment, while also protecting the principle of our investment, which is our primary priority, which is the preservation of capital of our taxpayers' money.
Yeah, and just for comparison, when Mary Ann and I came on council, we were making about 100th of that. I mean, literally, our return on investment was like a couple $1,000s. So, I mean, this is huge. Yeah, very exciting.
Yes, an investment committee, along with the treasurer, we have a quarterly report on the returns, and that will be coming soon. And then the last package that we presented to council, it included a graph and sort of that return. And yes, it is a bit shocking, the little returns that we're making, or that we're getting. We've implemented recommendations from the YSPD assessment. Those include increased community engagement. That includes foot patrols and bike patrols. We've also piloted the ad hoc personnel committee. We reviewed and updated over 70% of the policies. 74 were completed and 31 are pending. We've also taken the lead role on the Vernay property remediation, held several community meetings, and have been communicating with the EPA and ensuring that some of our concerns are addressed, some of which are being addressed prior to the statement of basis that's completed in the next month or so, that we anticipate that being completed. We've had 4 primary items that we were tracking with the EPA and the Vernay, and one of those is our water protection. Our water source, is that protected, or do we have any exposure? What's the exposure to our employees if they needed to do work at the site? Or is the unnamed creek, or also known as the Yellow Springs Waterhead,
Headwaters of the Yellow Springs Creek.
the headwaters of the Yellow Spring Creek, is there contamination there? And should we have a water main break, what are our concerns around back siphoning the contaminants? All of those items we've addressed, and we have contingency plans. So for example, the back siphoning of the water, we've got a contingency plan in place. We know where all the shut-up valves are, and so if we experience a break, we can immediately isolate the main water line, so that as to prevent cross-contamination of our water source. And we have secured memos on all the other items, and we've provided that to council. We've done some work on the railroad lot to increase economic activity there. We've also playing a role on the firehouse as an economic development. We piloted the temporary traffic initiative on South Walnut Street, where we tested a one-way, the drop-off lane, and parking arrangement. There are a lot of lessons learned there and a lot of good data that we received from there. A lot of community engagement. I think this project had over 700 people engaged, and I think any time where you engage that number of people, that's a good sign. You're getting information from your residents. We've also did a lot of beautification efforts of the John Bryan Center, the skate park, the front, the parking areas, and also the upgraded signs. One of the concerns that was brought before me when I started my tenure here, I started June 17th, and this letter came June 11th, and I've highlighted this section in the letter. It says, with the past affluent violations and bypasses from the sewage collection and treatment system, the village may not have the necessary capacity to handle this new development, particularly refers to a senior development. And this was particularly alarming for us because it said you can't do anything more. And so we knew that sewer was a major challenge that we needed to address. It's not new to our administration now. This has been an ongoing issue for many years. I know certainly the early reports that I read since I've been on board, they date back to 2012. So this is not a new issue, but it is an issue that we are tackling or we're taking head on. I included this slide in the presentation to demonstrate some of what's the average flow in our plants, and you can see both on this chart and the table that the water flows averages from July through December were pretty manageable, and they were within our operating capacity. And our operating capacity is 600,000 gallons per day. Any questions on this slide? Some of the work that we've done to address this, and I get into it in other slides, it's the addressing lids, the clean out traps. We've done some cammering work. We've foamed sewer lines to get rid of roots in our sewer lines. And we're doing continued improvements to reduce the infiltration and inflow that comes into our system. Johnny shared some of the photos that the camera crew have received, and one of them is so bad it's the worst that the company that's doing the cammering, the visual inspection, has seen. So I'm sure it's going to end up in a brochure somewhere, and we'll get that photo out to you.
I do have a question with regard to this slide. You said you did some of the clean outs and things to help improve the situation. I mean, have those been done over a long enough period of time where we would just be able to see gradual improvements, or were the clean outs and other improvements made such that at a point in time such that we could see some considerable improvement in our handling of the wastewater?
I would say yes, and it depends. For example, we've raised some maintenance holes, and we've done some work to address lids to address that intrusion, and that obviously is only effective to the extent how much water do you have. Once that water overflows, then it goes into our system. Johnny, any initial thoughts?
I don't think the cleanout traps is going to be a significant amount, but the manholes that we've raised above elevation and changing some lids out, we could see some differences. The main is when we start relining the sewers.
Mm-hmm. And we're scheduled to do relining of sewers in 2020.
Okay. Thank you.
This is a snapshot of our personnel. We got 49 employees, of which 38.8 live in Yellow Springs, 76.5% live in Greene County, 36.7 are female, 61.2 are male, 2% are non-gender specific. Additional demographic information, 75.5 are white, 24.5 identify as non-whites. Of those non-whites, 8.2 identify as black, 4.1 Hispanic, and 12.24 as multi or other. Finance, we've had a reduction in shutoffs. We had a growth in bill collection. We've improved credibility with the public, implemented the utility roundup program with 23% of our customer base participating. There's a specific roundup program in your slide. We successfully met the deadlines with reduced staff. As you know, we've had some staff shortages, but we've been able to do not just the work that's been already scheduled and operating work for the year, but we've been able to tackle additional projects. So I want to thank Colleen for her hard work and encouraging the team and motivating the team to get all this work done. We've reduced costs primarily on the banking expense, and we've improved fund management. I've also have a presentation on our budget. and this reviews the top-level figures that we want to cover. So on the revenue side, we collected more revenue than anticipated. This slide shows a pie chart on the left side and a table on the right side. Our budgeted revenue was at $13,582,213, and we collected $13,627,683.50. So we had a net revenue increase of $45,470. I want to point out that one of the negative numbers you'll see up there is in charges for services, and that's an amount of $227,417.65. We overprojected some of the revenue for the charges of services, so we collected less than charges. But despite that overprojection, we still did well on the revenue side. So you see some of the increases on the revenues. They came from the local taxes, the permits and miscellaneous receipts, the fines and permits. So I would like to emphasize there's more permits than fines. And that's 81,000. So they're up there. Moving on, the revenues for the general fund, which is 23% of our total revenue, 50% of it comes from the income tax, while 26% comes from local taxes and real estate. So this connects back to the conversation that we have about our operating levy. What finances our operating levy? As you can see that local taxes make up 23% of our overall budget. Significant amount of operations is covered through the charges for services and the running the enterprise services. I also break that out in a table. So projected budget revenue from the general fund was estimated to be $3,431,715, and we collected $3,618,090. That's a net increase of $186,375. So the chart also indicates where those increases came from. Any questions on these slides? Okay, moving on to, one more on revenue. This is the revenues for the enterprise funds. As you can see, the electric operations is the significant contributor to those enterprise funds at 60%. We break out a table here. 2 slides ago, I pointed out we received less in the charges for services, and this primarily is coming out of the electric operating fund, and that's due to over projection on the revenues. And that over projection, we've had some solar customers. We don't yet know the impact of the solar customers, but we will run those numbers over the next couple months to as we analyze the impact of having more residential solar. At least on a financial sheet, we know that there's significant community benefit of having the program. Expenses by fund, this is where we're spending our money. The 41% in electric operations and 26% in general fund, followed by water operating fund at 9% and sewer operating fund at 8%. Then all the other funds are smaller. I also break this out in a table. This table also highlights our total expenditures by fund. We had a budget to spend. On this graph, you'll see that says $15,420,202. Your quarterly financial report that's at your table indicates a lower amount, and I will speak through the differences. The difference is due to how funds from 2018 were encumbered and spent in 2019. So we carry over some of the expenses for from 2018 into 2019. So you'll see this 15,424 a little higher than your $15,037,577. That's where that difference came up from. That was our budgeted amount. Our total expenditures were $13,784,739. That's a difference of $1,635,463. There are some encumbrances for this year that we expect to spend encumbrances for 2019 that we expect to spend in 2020, and that totals $834,326. That is also on your quarterly financial sheet. In consideration of the encumbrance from 2019 that was spent in 2020, we still were under budget for the fiscal year 2020 by over 5%. Any questions on the expenses by fund? And that's that presentation, so I'll go back to my other presentation and keep it going. All right, we cover finances. All right, now we get into the police department. Again, I want to reiterate that because of the limited time I have for this presentation, it doesn't do justice to the great work that the individual departments do, so I'm covering the high levels on these slides. So on the police department, we had 9,345 calls, 466 were village policing calls. We had stolen property totaling $37,816.35, of which we recovered or helped our residents recover $9,368.53. Total offenses reported were 2,108, and we've issued 822 citations. You've heard earlier from the police chaplain program. That's one of the programs that Police Chief and Florence are spearheading, and that's a great community engagement program when we're having to deal with residents who are on their most vulnerable. They've experienced loss or other trauma, and the police chaplain help provide that much needed service that the police benefits from, and so do our residents. I'll start from the top. We've had community outreach specialist position in this year, of which the Florence had 246 contacts for 29 different types of services. The top service requested by residents were food security, homelessness, and mental health. We have the Handle with Care program. This is when we receive information about a minor who may be affected by an incident. The police department coordinates with the different organizations to ensure the safety of the child. So if it's school, they'll connect with the school and give them heads up there may be something going on, and that's to provide better service, better care for the entire family. Department policies, I mentioned earlier that we reviewed and updated policies, of which there are over 70% of policies were reviewed and updated. That's 74 completed, 31 pending. Mayor's Court, we're happy to report that 100% of eligible cases are being sent to the Mayor's Court. So we appreciate the work of the mayor and the clerk on working through those cases with us. We have a youth and police together. This is when the police are collaborating with the schools and engaging the youth at the schools, and that helps build relationship. It also helps identify youth that may be struggling, may need additional assistance and support. We've improved our records management system. That's through training and streamlined the request. We've continued to do our training programs on crisis intervention and scenario-based training. I'm happy to report that our officers and the department are well-versed in this area, that they themselves help conduct the trainings for other officers. We have a reentry for incarcerated residents. Chief and our community outreach specialists visit the jails where we have Yellow Springs residents and are preparing for reentry into society, and so our police department connects with those residents, with those returning citizens, so that they can incorporate into society have an easier process. We are also tracking community engagement efforts. We've had twice the performance from 2018, and that puts us at 469 encounters. We've also incorporated the bike patrol in addition to the foot patrol. So I hope you've seen our officers just walking about and engaging our residents. Finally, we've got the Village Youth Center. Our police department are engaged with our youth center activities. We've had a lot of challenges with some of our participants, but that's precisely why the youth center exists, so that they have a safe and welcoming environment. And if something does go wrong, we have the support systems in place to assist our youth. In addition to that, it's just a great space for them to hang out, have a safe space, play, and learn together. This is our police department. Planning and zoning, by the numbers, we've had 180 permits, of which, the accessory structures were a top priority for council and the residents, and that includes our residential solar program. I've included the additional data. I want to thank Denise for her work in the department, on leading this department that really it takes more than one person, but she's doing it with the assistance of a part-timer, and she's continuing to deliver high-quality work. Within that, she updated zoning legislation. We had junkyard, weed ordinance, and a few other things. There are a lot of zoning legislation that was updated. She's leading the comprehensive land use plan development. That includes preparing for Thursday's meeting or coordinating the table talk conversations that will take place on Thursday. She's improved the zoning application process. She's also contributed to the interdepartmental collaboration for improved services. An example of where this has worked well is the sorry, I've been speaking fast. The implementation of the new residential solar program that required interdepartmental collaboration. So they did that effectively and developed processes to do that better. Public Works water treatment. The department produced a total of 126 million gallons of water. That's an average of 346,000 gallons per day. Their water plant is operated by Kevin Martin, who has completed his experience time and received his Ohio EPA class certification. The water plant operator, Jennifer Amy, who also passed her Class 1 operator license test and is designated as an operator in training. The water plant operator, Sean Roos, passed his Class 2 operator license and is designated as the plant operator in training. Staff completed all yearly and monthly maintenance requirements based on manufacturer's recommendations. We've GPS the 3 future monitoring wells, so that work is done. So we go into the development and production of that work. We've also pressure watched our water towers. There are images included in your package, and I couldn't include them in these slides since there's a lot of content to be covered. We started cleaning out the vegetation around the water tower fences and clear vegetation along the hillside. We also hosted the American Water Works Association fall conferences where 50 water professionals gathered. We conducted a presentation and a tour of our water treatment plant. I indicated in the past that our plant was used as a model of good, high-quality water systems. It includes our softening system. Water reclamation. We treated a total of 238 million gallons of wastewater with an average of 652,000 gallons per day. This does exceed our capacity, or if you look at it on averages, and from the previous slide, you'll see where we took in a lot more water than we can handle, and that was on the first part of the year, January through June. So energy, as you know, this is one of our sludge partners. They removed 665 gallons of biosolids in 2019. We performed quarterly cleanings and inspections of chlorine contact tanks on east and west clarifiers. Completed all required wastewater analysis. Completed data microscopic bug counts to help control treatment process. I'm going to take a little pause here, and one of the things I learned today is that this site, our site, was the source of the bugs used by EnviroFlight. So that's a neat history of our treatment plant, that we provided the source of what bugs are, of this bug that's being sold globally. So Yellow Springs is around the world.
We knew that.
Prepped and painted air header lines and tank valve stems, removed and replaced a 20 horsepower pump and motor at the lift station. We work with Asylum to allow them to install and test current and future products. This is a benefit for us and for them. We get high-tech equipment, and they're also getting real-time exposure to operations. Completed engineering plans and received the OEPA PTI for the Vector pump dump station construction. I think you've heard Johnny speak in the past about the need to have a designated area to dump things that we suck up from our vac. So we completed that engineering plan. We also hosted approximately 25 wastewater professionals from around the world with Asylum to demonstrate some of their products. This is our water treatment and reclamation team. These are great photos, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
This is Rose Did Rose do these photos?
Yes, yes. We've discovered a lot of talent in our team. You've seen it in our signs, and now you're seeing it in our photos. So.
Well,
we're proud
the
of our
true
team.
test will be the village council photo. We're waiting to see.
Yeah, unfortunately, that one's not in this presentation.
Okay,
Fortunately,
All right, now on to our electric and water distribution. And again, these guys do so much work that all of these slides do not cover the great contributions that they make to the village. But here are some of their highlights. We've got a great talented team. Dustin Herron acquired his water distribution, 1 license, and completed his training along with Ben Sparks. This is a 2-day course on underground locating. Very important work for us. You'll see in other slides of how much locating work is done at the village. Our team changed out 28 poles in-house, and 5 were done by outside contractors. We conducted 2 overhead to underground conversions in some troublesome areas, and we received an award for that. I'll get to that in a future slide. We handled approximately 47 outages this year, primarily from trees falling and squirrels walking on our lines. You can imagine what happens to the squirrels. Including, in consideration of these 47 outages, we still managed to receive the Certificate of Excellence in Reliability Award from the APA. Johnny pointed out to me as we were speaking these numbers, he says, you know, we're among the best performing utilities, and that's where we get the Certificate of Excellence in Reliability. So we're a leader in our peer group.
that really does need, excuse me, Josue, that really does need to be shared, those kind of things. I think we sort of say it often enough, and I think when one of the awards was granted, we probably mentioned it in a meeting, but, when you listen to people, the average citizen, I don't think they understand, regardless of whether it's relative to some other municipality or not. I mean, if we are operating at that level of efficiency, I think that's part of the story that's just not getting out.
Correct. I appreciate that, Kevin, and, we work really hard in making sure that we have fast response time. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with Johnny where we mapped out our resources, our human resources, to see what's the deployment time. And we really got it. On after hours, we can get someone here in 15 minutes on site to be looking at an issue, and that's very impressive. That could be at 1 o'clock in the morning or at 4 o'clock in the morning, 15 minutes to get them to the site. So that's fast response time. We started the valve exercising program to assist us with main breaks. I mentioned this as we were talking about the back siphoning effect or concern that we had on the Vernay property. This helps us identify which valves are working and helps us plan for the future. As Johnny says, it's not if a water main's going to break, it's when. Is that how you say it, Johnny? All right. We responded to 6 water main breaks in 2019, an improvement from previous year. We collaborated with the biggest gas line project in Yellow Springs. We've devoted approximately 300 man-hours in locating the utilities. That's around over 1,800 locates conducted. That's when our team goes out and identifies which utility lines are what. We've hired Travis Hoteling. He's a Yellow Springs local, and he and Rose read over 2,200 water meters by hand each month. They're going into crawl spaces and onto properties to read these. And finally, we dressed up the village with new signs, tree lighting, light poles, and banners. These are the awards that we received, 4 of them. The Certificate of Reliability. We got the Water Operator Certificate that Johnny was awarded. We received the AMP gave us an award for a Whitehall Farm canopy preservation. This is one of the projects that we mentioned of undergrounding an overhead line. And then we received an honorable mention for our work on Orton Road, and we received the Safety Award for AMP. On the Safety Award, we're happy to report that we had 0 lost time in 2019. That's very impressive for our organization. That's across the board. That's police department, and that's our public works team. And we have done so for how many years, Johnny?
Since 2017.
Since 2017. So our team is not only working diligently and hard, but also doing it in a safe manner. And that is our Public Works electric and water distribution team. Public Works streets. This is a lot to read through. I know it's difficult to see, and again, it doesn't do it justice to all the work that they do. Our streets team maintained about 25 miles of street, overseed 50 acres of parks and village-owned property, and maintained over 30 miles of sewer. These are sanitary and storm. Staff oversees maintenance at the municipal pool and our other buildings. Team consists of Tanner Busi, and he has an EPA water distribution 1 license, along with Mike Neal, who has CDL Class A license, and EPA wastewater collection 1 license. Adam Williamson holds a CDL Class A license. They performed 10 full depth repairs of potholes in the streets, installed asphalt in 7 utility cuts, replaced 65 street signs, replaced 40 signposts, replaced 1,000 feet of sidewalk, finished the 2016 Safe Routes to School project by adding new sidewalk and storm line. A note on this that Johnny and the team have also engaged the Safe Routes to School team to start the second phase of the project, which is to connect sidewalks from Dayton Street down Limestone to South Walnut. We've uncovered 10 buried manholes. This is a new discovery. Our team out in the field, and lo and behold, there's a manhole, there's a maintenance hole in the ground that's been covered in. We've uncovered it, and some have been raised to prevent that water intrusion. We jetted 20,000 feet of sanitary pipe, jetted 1,500 feet of storm pipe. We replaced nearly 200 feet of 24-inch piping along Xenia Avenue. We raised 18 catch basins, installed 6 new side inlet catch basins, replaced coupling, grade rings around 5 maintenance holes, and vacuum out 40 catch basins. There are pictures in your packet that reference all these different items. We've also foamed 17,000 feet of sanitary line with root control. We've created that ADA compliant ramp from the bike path to the skate park. We've created new parking in the old basketball lot, and we've expanded parking capacity on the railroad lot. We also built a new computer workstation for the youth center at the John Bryan Center. This is one of the most rewarding things that we see. A lot of kids on it. They're doing homework, doing schoolwork. So we're delighted to be able to offer that opportunity to our youth. And we added new concrete paths to the front entrance of the John Bryan Center. This is our electric water distribution team. And with that, we thank you from your administrative team that we serve proudly.
Okay, questions or comments from council?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
So one comment I have is, I do want to make sure that this gets on the website, and Judy, also, I didn't see the council year in review on the website. I want to make sure that.
It is there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I will double
And
check.
I never saw it like kind of on the latest news
Okay.
piece.
Okay.
Questions or comments from citizens? All right, well, I'll just reiterate, wow.
I think we were overcome with excellence.
Thank you.
And, yeah, and we'll be talking a little bit more when we get into new business about how council and the village team, we are the village team, are syncing up our goals to be more efficient, more effective, and deliver on some of the essentials. So, thank you, Josue.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
yeah.
And we're now going to shift into citizen concerns. So this is the time on the agenda when we invite any comments, no more than 3 minutes, or you get the gavel.
What?
Yeah, watch out. And these are any things that are not on the agenda, and since we don't have much on the agenda tonight, pretty much anything's open game. Dino, you look like you're raring to go, so come on up.
Hi, everybody. Dino Pallotta. I want to touch base. I went through the letter about waiving tap-in fees for HomeInc on the senior project. I just want to touch on that and say, as a concerned citizen, just as a taxpayer, we've given a lot to HomeInc. You gave 30 grand last year, you're considering 30 grand this year. I know it's tagged to go certain areas. My concern that I have with this is that you're putting this on the taxpayer to, again, subsidize them. It may help their program, and I understand that will help their program, the senior project, that it could, with giving them that, making them more affordable when they turn in their project for their credits. What I'm looking at is that while it may make them affordable, it's not making us affordable as a taxpayer. We're subsidizing this again, and that's what I always come down to: is where is there a line that it's going to finally be drawn that you can only go to the well so much and have the taxpayers take that burden on. So that's where I'm looking at, is where our money's going and how much you're going to continue to go, not to just that business, but to Home Inc. or to any business, how much you're going to keep on going to the well. That's my concern with that. And the other part that I have with this is the timing of this. I see that their deadline for the project is February 15th, that they have to turn it in. You've got next week, or 2 weeks from now, so that's 2 weeks that you're going to consider waiving fees or what you want to do with that. Then they've got another week and a half after that to turn in. So timing is also an issue. I know they've given us this opportunity to do this, but again, it's coming back to the taxpayer, and that's what I'm looking at, is how much are we going to continue to go down this road. And the timing of it, considering we've had a year since they've last put their application in, and we're coming down to the deadline, and they're looking for this last push from us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dino. Any other citizen concerns? Okay. Well, apparently we have no old business. I guess 2020 is like a fresh start. So we're gonna move into new business and talk a little bit about our retreat last week. So I wanna say a few things, and actually I also want council members to weigh in. So the first thing I wanna say is that, Megan can be our objective witness on this, but in my 6 years on council, this was the best retreat that I was involved in. And I think one of the things that really made it that way was the fact that Josue brought in our leadership team and really provided us with significant input about where we're going as a village, what our priorities are, to help us really think about how we should articulate our 2020 village goals. And 2 years ago we switched from talking about them as council goals to village goals, and I think we're wrapping our head around what that means, that we need to come together as a team to understand what our capacity is, what our priorities need to be. Laura's highlighted sort of like the nuts and bolts of what village government is about, which I think this council has embraced in terms of infrastructure and tackling those goals. And so I just want to appreciate the team for helping us stay on track with, what makes sense, what those priorities are. And so what you will see at our next meeting on February 3rd is a draft of what we think those goals look like. We have a very rough draft on the table of some of the ideas that came out of that, but I did want to give council members maybe a minute or two each just to highlight what you articulated last week in terms of priorities. And then in our next packet, you will see something that's going to be a product from all council members and also from the village team around where we're heading. And as we've done in the past, we will then, discuss those goals, make sure we're on the same page, and again, we'll probably see a 50 million slide PowerPoint presentation at the end of this year. So, Laura, let's just start from the end, and maybe again, just kind of like, if you could just kind of give like the main highlights of what you're thinking in terms of where we should be focusing in 2020.
Well, as I commented at the retreat, paying attention to where we're, it's hard to say this after that wonderful report that Josue just gave, but I'm glad staff's aware of, particularly with the infrastructure needs, which is typical. You're correcting problems from the past, so those are some of the goals that are here, particularly with sanitary sewer and stormwater. Those are, as a matter of fact, I see that as an impediment to developing. Because, and that letter from the EPA is sort of the full stop. I mean, unless we have a plan that for sure by 2021, 100,000 gallons will be below the maximum threshold of that plant. Because right now, it's really at capacity when we have heavy rain events, which is several times a year. So I just got this, so I'm not sure how much of what I said you incorporated, but I really am excited about the Community Development Corporation and its ability. It has so many tools it can use to help us with development of commercial, residential, of all kind, moderate and low income, et cetera. Let's see. Maybe you could come back to me, so I'll look at this a little bit more, but those are the main things that I was excited about at the retreat.
Cool, thanks. Lisa?
Yeah, I also appreciated the collaboration at the retreat, both between the council members, but also with Josue, and I do think it was great to have the village leadership there.
Thank you.
Firsthand, while Josue, that was an amazing overview that you just provided. I couldn't have possibly absorbed that fire hose without the more detailed review that we had at the retreat, particularly around the work at the police department. And hearing things all rolled up like that makes it very evident to me that you've accomplished a lot, Chief Carlson, and I want to make note of that. The swearing in tonight also highlighted that for me, so thank you. You know, my interests as a council person haven't changed that much in the last year. I guess the one thing that I've realized is that it's a risk to be involved with too many things and not able to go really deep into anything. And I experienced that late last year, and again, to an extent, in the last couple of weeks with the health assessment that I was, you know, really passionate about, and now this culture of health application that could not have been achieved without the volunteer time of a community member, Cindy Seek. And I think that's an example for me personally where the intersection of wellness in the community and how that sits with infrastructure and economic development and policing, to me, those are all kind of combined to create a healthy community. But I don't want to get spread too thin and make any promises to anybody here or the community out there that I can't follow through on. So, you know, for me, when I really think about what's most important to me, and the real work of our government is to continue to work with the Finance Advisory Group. I'm very, very proud of the accomplishments with investments. I'm very proud of that, and I think we can continue to do good work there. And I think that you all know that I really want to continue to be involved in the way infrastructure work can be supported with intelligent strategic planning and economic development. So I remain really interested in our infrastructure issues in the village and what we might be able to help with that. I remain very committed to the idea that it would be good to have a citizen advisory, a platform for community members who want to talk about their experiences with the police. This is something we've talked about before, and I'd like to pick that conversation up again with both the chief and his team and members of the village mediation. So, you know, those are the things that I remain most committed to. And they map across a number of these goals. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to highlight, because I'm not sure we've said it at a council meeting yet, but congratulations to Lisa being appointed the vice president of the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. Yes, that's right.
Thank you. I think it's going to be a great vehicle for our community.
I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Kevin?
Well, you know, I think this village is full of great people, as a start. And, you know, with the most recent changes of configuration of the council, I think we have as great or better team than we recently had. The retreat was very informative. Obviously, I don't have 6 years' experience as Brian does, so I don't have as many retreats to compare with, but it did create, with having village leadership there, it did create a sense of camaraderie. In other words, it's not us and them. You know, we are, I think, Brian, you touched on it a little while ago, we are the village team. And so it never did appear, you know, where there was that line of delineation in terms of, you know, who's responsible for this thing. We're all in this thing together. You know, we do have subject matter experts, you know, who do take the lead on things, but it really did create a sense of family and unity. And it just seemed, in the 2 or 3 retreats that I've been involved with, I would agree that it's been the most productive that we've dealt with in the past. And so I'm really excited about that. In terms of the things I talked about, I'll just be brief. Just, you know, affordability in general, that means there's a lot of things under that umbrella. You know, economic development. I did take a look at the website that Chief Carlson suggested that we take a look at as a model of what could be done here in terms of highlighting not just all the good things that the police officers do, but also providing information and access, you know, for the citizens. Just similar to the comment I made earlier about what Public Works does. You know, so I think in general we need to focus on a broader communication strategy, and it sort of falls in the bailiwick of technology, where some of my interests lie. But whatever we need to do, whether it's, you know, old school, new school technology, you know, get the word out that we're doing good stuff. I mean, we're not just starting to do good stuff. We've always been doing good stuff. We're just starting to hear about it more. And I think what we're talking about now is providing more avenues where that information can be shared, you know, in a positive light. So again, not to take up too much time, again, we've talked about the goals, and I think, Brian, you also alluded to that, village goals as opposed to council goals. And so we looked at where we felt each of us individually might align with those in our interests and whatnot, and I acknowledge the draft commission consideration as a good start, absolutely. I'm certainly in favor of that. And I think it's just important that we start with what it is we want to do or have the commissions do for us, and then just put the best people that we have in leadership positions, you know, as liaisons for those commissions. And it looks like we're really off to a good start in that regard.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Sure.
Marianne?
I think we're engaged in a process of continual improvement. I mean, that's sort of that's our focus. And part of that continual improvement is increasing our communication, whether it's within council or between council and staff, or within staff, or between commission, whatever. Part of it is that, and it's not like working more and getting burnt out either. So, I mean, I think for me, continual improvement means well, sort of like Lisa said, but I felt like deciding what we're going to focus on, making some priorities and focusing on them. And it's really easy to get distracted, and it felt like last year, especially hiring a new village manager, there was lots of stuff going on, and like we're like, sort of like this. So in terms of my thoughts from the retreat, infrastructure, definitely stormwater management in particular, and how that relates to our sewer system, our sanitary and storm sewer system. And my thought that we should be creating a line item that we should at least talk about creating a line item in our budget for stormwater management, given that this is going to be an increasing issue. The police, all of the departments in House Sway's report just, well, like I said, wow. But given that I was more involved in the police with the police assessment, and then the things that have been happening in the police department, I just feel very proud of all you guys. I feel sort of teary. At the retreat, Laura had made a suggestion for basically reordering our council commission structure, and I proposed that we create a committee to look at that, and I believe that will be done. And one thing that I think offering an alternative structure, it sort of gives us a chance to sort of contrast, compare. I don't know that I would want to just totally take away what we have and change it, but it does help us, I think, helps me think of some things that we could be improving incrementally. Again, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation, as everyone's been saying, I guess, I'm excited about that, and I think that will be a great asset to our community. The comprehensive land use plan update, I'm excited about that, being involved in that. The Vernay issue, of course, it's been going on for over 20 years, but it popped up this year. It's the first year really that the village government has been involved in it much, and we've really made some progress, I think, both in terms of creating a relationship with the EPA, and I feel very positive about that and the people that we're working with in the EPA, as well as with Vernay. The CEO of Vernay came and met with our team, and I was impressed. And the Vernay remediation that will hopefully be what's that term, when the EPA issues their final statement of basis, brought up issues about our water system and the need both to have a new source water protection plan done. The last one was 20 years ago, as well as an even more immediate to have a new assessment of our catchment area, where our water comes from. There are new technologies, is my understanding, to do that, and that helps us understand better where the potential pollution sources, point and non-point solutions could be, and it was sort of triggered somewhat by the possibility of the overlay of the Vernay plume. And then for me, that led me to realize that the Environmental Commission has a number of projects that it has been working on and wants to continue, and that wasn't in our goal statement at all. Well,
I started,
it is,
but
I know.
Yeah. Prior.
Prior, and
Right,
I
right.
sort of went, whoa,
Yeah.
I have been remiss in not including this.
Mhm.
So that's now, we now have at least a placeholder in our
Right.
goal statement. Housing, as everyone knows probably, is sort of my passion to make sure that we have all sorts of housing, and in particular, housing for moderate and lower income people. And that we're making progress. The village and Home Inc. actually has I think last year, 10 new rentals?
Yeah,
I'm not
because
sure.
there was the 4-unit, the 2-unit, so
Six
6 plus.
Six rental, I guess. So in terms of focusing, what I said when I ran for reelection was I wanted to commit to seeing the Vernay remediation process get finished. And then after that's done, we work on how does that property get managed. And I think we've made some steps in that direction by reestablishing a relationship with Vernay. Housing, I want to focus on that, and on how, and trying to communicate as well as possible with our community. I think that I've suggested that we publish an annual report that's easily available to the community, and the Community Development Corporation will be a way to do that, I think. We talked about having more communication across the commissions so that the commissions know what each other is doing, and with staff. So, that's it. I'm done.
Thank you. So, as I was listening to Mary Ann and some of the other comments from other council members, I love that we have that Corkle over there because, you know, I think our village team realizes, you know, sort of how important these principles are. You know, I think there's still an opportunity for the community to understand that, you know, this is something that we developed as a team, and really our commitments to serving the community better. And there were 2 things that were highlighted. I always talk about the O. Oh, by the way, Corkle means the heart of the seed. And I think that's a really cool thing. But beyond the open piece, I've been thinking a lot more about empathy. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, I heard from Mary Ann is, you know, in terms of this continuous improvement is making sure that we appreciate work-life balance for everybody, and understanding that the more we extend ourselves, the less effective we are. And I think that's going to be an important principle moving forward. So in that context, I'm committed to 3 items. One of them that I think we've all talked about and I know is important to everybody else is our commitment to infrastructure. And this is why, you know, we are willing to invest, you know, what's been a relatively healthy general fund to make sure that we are fixing crumbling infrastructure despite the lack of support from the state and federal government. And we will continue to do that, and I continue to be impressed with our team and figuring out creative ways to find grants, shared services, other opportunities to keep that going. So that's really important. The second thing is we are going to be talking a lot about why renewing the operating levy is important. And we're going to be looking in depth at, you know, income tax, property tax, and other aspects of the village, and really justifying why that $750,000 that levy brings in year on year is critical if we want to continue to not only move forward these infrastructure improvements, but also guarantee the great services from the village. Is there a time in the future where that levy, you know, may not be necessary? That would be great. But I hope everyone sees, you know, from not only the, you know, the very careful fiscal responsibility of council and the staff, but also in terms of just, you know, what we are trying to do to ensure a thriving community, how important that is. And there's going to be a lot of information about that throughout the year. And then the third thing that several council members mentioned, and it's critical, is this comprehensive land use plan. In my mind, everything that we're thinking about moving forward is going to come out of that in terms of all the different stakeholders that are represented by the Development Corporation, in terms of, you know, what our future looks like as a community, in terms of how we best use our land resources, how we develop in terms of a community and in terms of economic development. This is an amazing opportunity. I'm so happy about everyone that's participated in this process. And I want to, again, highlight Thursday as yet another opportunity to shape our future. So the comprehensive land use plan is huge in my mind, and we are committed to implementing those recommendations, right? Whatever comes out of that, whether it is parking assets or school facilities or, what the Antioch College property looks like. I mean, there's just amazing opportunities for us as a village, and it is the way that we're going to remain sustainable. So that's where I'm coming from, and as I highlighted at our next meeting, you'll see a document where we capture these ideas from council, staff, and basically everyone on the team, so that we can, really start to focus and work in a concerted effort. So, Laura, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
I think the only other thing was, one thing that I've noticed over the past several years is that us being concerned about housing and then us being the developer, that's what's changed. So some of these goals, like, it makes it a village goal for us to develop purchasable units. I just don't see us doing that. I see us assisting others in the way villages typically do.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why I'm excited about the Community Development Corporation is something, a unit that can do that. And then my recommendation about council committees was about how we do our work. Some of it would mean people in certain commissions coming into a committee and doing their work in the committee, but it was also a response to the council's evaluation of commissions and the feedback that council's gotten, that a lot of commissions, they felt there was a disconnect between their work and then products of council. So a way to make that closer and more effective was my proposal.
Great.
And it's online if anybody wants to read it on the retreat links.
And I think that's a nice segue into the next agenda item, which is talking about council assignments. So one of the things we did at our retreat is talk in depth about our current commissions, as well as some of the priorities for council members and whatnot. So I'm going to highlight a few things. I'll just let the members in the audience know we do have a worksheet in front of us. I mean, we didn't make any decisions at our retreat, but we're going to kind of finalize that. So I think the first thing I want to do is I want to hop down to talk about an additional commission that we have talked about putting on hiatus, which is the Economic Sustainability Commission, which has done some great work. But as you've heard tonight, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation has really been the organization that we're really putting a lot of focus on for that economic development activity. The village, as well as the township and the schools and Antioch College and the chamber and the community foundation are playing a significant role in that. And so both the commission and in our discussions realized that there wasn't a clear role now that the Development Corporation is in play. So we are talking about putting that commission on hiatus, and then I just wanted to also mention that the Energy Board, which we put on hiatus last year, as well as the Community Access Panel that's been on hiatus for a couple years. I think the main thing for us is that it's great to have all these bodies, but they do require a lot of council and staff time. And ultimately, all of these commissions, boards, committees are about providing capacity. So that's one of the things that we have on the table. And I'm going to work up from our worksheet to mention two task forces that have been highlighted. One of them, Josue mentioned at the retreat, was potentially I'm sorry, yes.
In
Please.
regard to the Economic Sustainability
Yeah.
Commission, and I don't have, I mean, I'm fine about putting it on hiatus, but I know that when the Energy Board went on hiatus, there were some very hard feelings. So,
I can speak to that.
Yep.
yeah, okay.
So I just took the initiative after the retreat to reach out to the members of the ESC, and I've heard back from the majority of them one-on-one. And, you know, I think the process of doing the evaluation, you know, I think people were kind of coming to that conclusion on their own. You know, the ESC did a tremendous amount of incubation work in 2019 for the revolving loan fund and then for the development corporation, then both of which were kind of lifted out of their hands. And, you know, really without that commission, we wouldn't have been able to stand up the Yellow Springs Development Corp as fast and as effectively. So I'm really grateful to them. And if there was any, I think any hard feelings, it was maybe just that they had this feeling of, you know, having a baby and then having the baby taken away. But one member expressed that they were concerned that, you know, because the YSDC doesn't have, you know, a full staff component yet, that, you know, will we be losing capacity in the long run if we put that commission on hiatus? And my thoughts there were that we could still convene ad hoc if we need support. And the others who responded said, yep, this makes sense to us. So I think that people are feeling okay about it. And I also invited them to come and speak this evening if they had any concerns about the commission going on hiatus. And so, yeah.
And so
Thank you for asking them, Marianne.
Yes, and I will say related to that, Judy, one of the things I'd like to do is, you know, as we, you know, list the active commissions, that we also keep these commissions on hiatus on the list.
Okay.
Just so we know that those are resources that we could always go back to. As Lisa said, you know, whether it's ad hoc or whether we want to revive those commissions, that we know that that's, you know, just kind of keeping that historical perspective.
Okay.
So then in terms of the two task forces that were highlighted, so one, Josue mentioned that he thought there was a possible need for a residential solar task force based on, you know, some of the changes that we made this past year and the heightened activity around that. So that was something that I included. The other thing that came up was potentially a task force around the municipal broadband fiber effort. And, you know, just to clarify for folks, when we talk about a task force, like when we have the justice system task force, it tends to be a, you know, sort of limited term kind of organization with some specific goals that, you know, will ultimately end. And so when we had the justice system task force, we gave it a 2-year period to tackle some really important issues, which they did a great job with. So that's kind of the issue there. Lisa.
You know, as you mentioned, Curlis did propose some alternate ways to approach some governance, and I think that some of the ideas that were in that proposal were really feasible groupings that might be a way to pick up some of these. I don't want to say they're small because they're important, but a groupings. And so I think that, you know, if we can defer making some of those decisions, maybe when we get together and look at that proposal, you know, once we say, okay, these are the commissions that we maybe will keep as they are, this is who's going to cover, this is what's left over, or what's unaddressed is probably a better thing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we integrate some of those recommendations?
Yes. And I think to that point, that's a nice segue to, you know, the other piece, sort of like the existing commissions, committees, whatnot, is, yeah, I think all of us appreciated Laura's proposal and, you know, some of the upsides of a committee structure in terms of efficiency and helping to sort of develop and incubate ideas so that our meetings can be more efficient. And I don't want to get anyone too excited, but we are talking about 2-hour meetings moving forward. So, yes.
Okay, so that means we need to move along. So we can get,
Well, we aren't doing 2-hour meetings yet. We're still in our 2.5. We're still in our 2.5 hour. meeting.
I thought we were in 2
that,
hours too.
No, that was February 3rd. We said we would try that out.
I missed that.
But the other items are going to be a lot shorter. But I mean, I do want to spend the time here because, you know, there's some downsides to that change, you know, potentially, which is that a committee structure is more of a council-led structure, and it does engage staff, which, you know, may increase time commitments. We still need to evaluate that with our committee. You know, as opposed to, like, we've intentionally, with commissions, made those more citizen-led. And so that is a change that, you know, I think appropriately we are going to evaluate, and, you know, we're gonna, like, look at probably trying a few of these committees out. And in fact, that's kind of built into what we're looking at right now. So I guess from there, I'm not sure that we need to go committee by or commission by commission necessarily, but you know, I guess what I want to do is just, I'll mention sort of what's on the table that we think is going to be active, and then I'd like to hear if there are any concerns from council in terms of just what I heard at our retreat in terms of assignments. So, I mean, we know Planning Commission, it's part of the charter. The Planning Commission will always be there. We have the Active Transportation Enhancement Committee that we agreed to last year was an important committee that would be under the umbrella of Planning Commission because of all the projects around active transportation, public safety, and so forth, and making sure that we're vetting those projects and also aligning that with you know, the Planning Commission. We've got the Finance Advisory Committee we've talked about tonight, the Development Corporation, and then some of the commissions that we believe have an important continuing role: the Arts and Culture Commission, the Library Commission, the Human Relations Commission, the Environmental Commission, and then we've got the Housing Advisory Board, Village Mediation, and I skipped over the Justice System Advisory Board because we've been talking a lot about, is it a commission, is it a manager's board, whatnot. I want to emphasize one thing here, because there's been some confusion, and also I saw something in the paper that I think is not accurate in terms of what council said. I want to make it very clear, my perspective on the manager's advisory boards is that these do fall under sunshine law. These are publicly announced meetings. People can attend those meetings. And I mean, unless anyone disagrees with that, that is the understanding that we've had, and that's what's going on with those. And so if we in fact do move forward with the Justice System Advisory Board, which I think is a good idea, especially in terms of, you know, the 70% of the policies that have been completed that I think could be vetted and reported on, some of the recommendations from the assessment, that those all fall under that purview. And then the only other two I didn't mention is Miami Valley Regional Planning and Greene County Regional Planning, where we do have a seat. I represent the village for both of those. So that's kind of like the, you know, where we're at. Two other things I want to say in terms of these assessments. In my mind, being the liaison or the alternate is an artificial distinction. Any alternate can be as active as the liaison on these commissions. So, and I've always advocated for the alternates attending those meetings whenever they can, so that if they do need to step in and run the meeting, they know what's going on. You know, it's just not, you know, it's not just like, oh, you know, here I am, I have no idea what you've been doing. And then I think the other piece is, you know, again, reminding all council members that while we're not required with our commissions to make them a part of the Sunshine Law, we have decided to do that because we are all about transparency. We want that public participation. And so even though it's not legally required, that's the way we've set them up. And so that means that even though I'm like willing to give up my seat on the Development Corporation, for example, I will probably still attend those meetings because they are public meetings and I still want to be involved in those. So I do want to iterate that, you know, whether you're the liaison, the alternate, or none of those, all council members can be involved as they want to, as well as community members. So that being said, are there any sort of, based on what I heard from the retreat and these suggestions that council members want to talk about?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, I think this is a good start. When we consider the proposal that Laura made, and we are thinking about, you know, where that can work, I think the duty of the day, as it were, is to place us somewhere today. I mean, we just can't have spots hanging around. You know, the meetings for the commissions that exist, the meetings are still happening. You know, there needs to be a primary, there needs to be a secondary. So I think this as a draft suggestion, I think is good. I personally don't feel like I need to differ with anything here. You know, time will tell, like I said, as we get going and as we consider or try to overlay some of the committee type proposals, you know, that might dictate, well, you know, half of what this commission is doing and half of what that commission is doing maybe should be in the committee. So, but I think we, you know, as the year begins, this is a great start, and then we move further down the road doing the work of the people and considering the suggestions of how we can be more efficient in doing so.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Laura?
Well, you know, I'm having cognitive dissonance because I proposed a totally different kind of a system. I believe that council committees should mirror the departments of the village and then bring in some of the related activities. That's why I suggested some of these commissions definitely are helpful and needed, because we don't have like an arts and culture department with a department head for that. So that's something outside of government that enhances the quality of life in the community. We don't have a housing department. So why do we have a housing advisory board? If somebody, a developer, is doing housing, they'll bring a plan or an ask or something to planning commission.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I would put together anything related to energy under, I suggested an Environment and Energy Commission, or a council committee that would deal with anything related to the environment and energy, and that's where I'd put residential solar. You know, I wouldn't create yet another task force. And in my memo, I said, what we've seen over time is it just keeps growing and growing. And I've just put all the meetings in my calendar, and if I go to all the meetings, I'll never go on a vacation, ever. So it just feels like way too much to me. It needs to be reorganized in a more efficient, effective way. Just, that's why I'm having kind of a problem with this. But I will serve where you put me, because I know I'm just one voice.
And I hope, you know, it wasn't just, you know, I mean, I hope I reflected that I listened to people's priorities and placed them, you know, based on that.
I think it reflects what I heard in the retreat.
Right. But I think we have acknowledged that we're open and willing to explore, you know, an alternative way to like do this. But I guess I feel like just making a sweeping change, you know, today is premature.
I would agree with that, and I'm even wondering to what extent we really delve into it, because again, I spent a lot of hours, I put together a lengthy proposal, and we'll have a meeting about it, and we'll see what comes out of that meeting.
Yep. Yep.
So I don't want to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I think that it was evident that you spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I do want to have a meeting, but it does seem like we're having a hard time finding a schedule and in the time that everyone can meet. And so, I mean, in the interest of time, I just want to comment that I think it's important to have citizen-run commissions. And I also think it's important to create space for the village manager and his team to do their work without what I am worried about, micromanagement from council members. So those are the kind of two things that I want to try to balance between the committee proposal that mirrors the departments of the village and the current commission, which does extend capacity in the ways you identify, for example, art and culture. But I do like some of the groupings you created. So I mean, to me, those are some of the things that I think are going to be important for us to talk about.
And I just want to extend off of that, my takeaway was we had some opportunities to pilot some committees. I mean, one of the ones we're already doing is the Finance Advisory Committee, where, I mean, I think of that as 2 council members that are, involved with staff to continue to grow our return on investment. And then the other one that, I think it makes sense is that Active Transportation Committee, where, again, I propose that Laura and I are the 2 council members there. So I guess, in my mind, I want to already start seeing how this works, with, the process of sort of evaluating that.
I mean, we have to carry on with something. I would put active transportation under a streets committee.
Right. Well, and
I mean, so that agenda would come into that committee, and then any active transportation. You see what I mean?
Sure.
Instead of a whole separate.
Well, I think, to me, we, approved that, concept, but, you heard me even, talk about, public safety and streets or whatever. So I'm already, contemplating that, at least in my mind. Mary Ann, anything you want to weigh in on?
Nope.
Okay, so I think I haven't heard anyone say that this is counter to what they were thinking. So, Megan, you can see this sheet if you want, and we will, I think, put this into the next packet and, sort of, I guess, approve it in whatever way we do. I mean, I don't think we've ever been that formal about the assignments. But any other questions?
Well,
Yes.
it might be excellent to know what's happening with Planning Commission in a timely fashion, because we've got hearings, we've got all kinds of business going on with Planning Commission, we've got interviews.
So, all right, so the proposal is for Laura to be the liaison for Planning Commission and Lisa Krieger to be the alternate. So, should we make a motion on that, Judy, or?
It doesn't really need a motion as long as there's approval at the table that,
Okay.
you know.
So we all
folks
good
are
with that?
in agreement.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good one.
Okay, good discussion, and let's talk about energy credits.
All right.
RECs,
Right.
renewable energy credits.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, not the regular. energy
That's
credits,
right.
the Renewable. I don't know.
The renewable credits. Give me a second while I get set up here. All right.
Yeah, and while Josue is getting set up, I'll just, this was something I requested because for several years, we've sort of had a policy that we hold on to our renewable energy credits. So, I kind of pushed the issue of, why can't we sell them? And this is kind of related to looking for revenue generating opportunities for the village. There are lots of municipalities and organizations that sell their renewable energy credits to companies that are polluters, to be frank. And, so I wanted to make sure we explored this opportunity and understood what the costs or benefits of selling them or not were.
And Brian, in that introduction, there's a lot of area to be covered, right? The market, what are they worth, and where does the market go to cover the polluters and whatnot? So I try to cover all of that you've, that's packed in your conversation.
So
on
can
this item.
can I just, for a clarifying question, I think I understand it, but, the polluters, might, a company who does pollute, might be in a position where they might have to pay some fees,
And I
and
get you that.
those fees can be reduced if they can buy those credits.
Correct.
And their net costs
Correct.
are lower.
Correct, and I get to that from a compliance perspective. So this is what I attempt to cover in this presentation. I'll do an overall energy portfolio review, look at our annual forecasted generation, look at our renewable energy credit inventory, what's the market prices for these, how much are they worth, and a conversation about renewable energy credits. So to kick off, we get 83% of our energy from renewable sources. This is a pie chart of where they're coming from. A lot of our renewable energy is coming from hydro plants. We've got the Green Up, we've got the Medal, the AMP Hydro, the New York, Pennsylvania Hydro, and then we've got a couple smaller sources. We've got EDI landfill at 16%, the Brown County landfill at 10%, the Blue Creek Wind 2.1%, and then there's that Yellow Spring Solar in our portfolio, and we're buying 17.2% off the market. This number is going to change for 2020. As you know, we're betting on about 1 or 2% in residential solar onto our grid. So this is our portfolio. 83% of it is coming from renewable sources. So here's the hydro generation. This is what we expect to generate out of our contracts. We've got AMP is going to have 1 million megawatts, Green Up 254,000, Medal 556. What these then become is our inventory. What are these energy productions worth on a renewable energy credit basis? Hydro provides 55,465. Rex, the brownfield landfill, another 4,894 Rex. These are broken out by years because the compliance market, many of these businesses are buying to fulfill a compliance requirement. So the credits these credits, when they're generated, in the year that they're generated, they are good for 5 years. So our 2016 credits that we produce, they're not worth a whole lot now because they're expiring. Their life is expiring. So our 2019 or 2020 will be worth more, and you'll see that reflected in the market price. Any questions on inventory? Okay. This is what pricing market was as of a couple weeks ago when we requested this information. So 2019 credits, this is how the pricing changed for non-solar credits. $6 back in January, and beginning of this year was at $7.25. So there was a spike in the market. And right on the right-hand side are the Ohio 2020 RECs. Those are RECs generated for 2020. So this is their price point. We have a lot in our inventory for previous years, so we may be looking at a mix of prices that may fall somewhere between $6. So how much are they worth? When you add up our hydros and our landfills, we total 60,359 RECs. If we took an average price of $6, we estimate the value to be of $362,154. Now this estimate will become much more tangible when we engage the broker and say, with your authority, go out and get a bid for this or try to sell this. So this is what they're worth. Now this is what they're worth on an economic value. But what are they worth to the village? And this gets to the conversation that,
Could I ask one question? If we went in, let's say today, and sold them, we have these back credits from previous years, but then if we started selling them from then on, would we only have the particular year?
we would have what gets generated by our contracts. So this is what's being generated by AMP. I've got the 3 different hydro projects in our portfolio up here. So we own 0.38% of that generation. That's what we buy, that's what we contracted them for. So whatever gets generated from the RECs from that plant, we own that into the term of our contract. So as they're being generated, the energy's being generated, we own that.
Is this an annual?
Yes, they're generated annually, and this is based on the REC. So these are, in 2016, we generated at 13,000 RECs, 2017 was 15,000, 2018 was 12,000. So in the future, we will generate these RECs.
Yeah, but if we sold everything we have now, we'd say we'd made $400,000 or whatever, but then we would have sold everything, and then we would now be selling the ones that we're generating year by year.
Correct,
So
correct.
our sale value would be maybe 100,000 or something.
Yeah, we will have to engage the broker
Would
to
drop.
understand that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now we get into the question of what are they worth to the village? This conversation is required on how the renewable energy credits split green energy into 2 revenue streams. One is the electricity that these projects produce, and, you know, that's used to power blenders and lights and whatnot. And then the greenness of the REC and its market. That's companies, the polluters, as you stated, or, you know, for whatever reason, the one is a compliance. People buy credits for compliance purposes. They're required to meet certain compliance requirements of having green energy in the portfolio. And since they can't generate it or they can't enter into contracts to buy this energy, they'll go out and buy the RECs and claim the offset. And so then they are green, or they have green energy in their portfolio because they own the RECs. So that energy, the greenness of this RECs is influenced by, well, where's production and where's the demand? We in the PJM region, and there's the demand and there's no market price. So there's a lot of compliance requirements in that region, and that's what pushes the market price higher. I took these illustrations from Bloomberg New Energy Finance publication. These are a bit dated, but the trend still holds. What moves the market is the demand for RECs and where those compliance for those RECs lies. So the next slide covers where are these RECs going. They're going a lot in the compliance portfolio. That's that renewable portfolio standard. The voluntary folks are the municipalities that build renewable energy infrastructure projects, and they hold on to the RECs, or, you know, for whatever it is they're choosing to hold on to it, or other companies that hold on to it because they want to be green. They want to claim that they're green, so they'll hold on to it. They'll take the financial interest out of the equation. But a lot of these RECs are moved by meeting those compliance requirements. Could you sell your RECs and be green? And Laura
It's a
sees
philosophical
it.
question.
Yes, Laura sees where this is going, and I think that this is, you know, like she stated, it is a philosophical conversation, and I provided you the background for this. So, given that very limited presentation on what RECs are, what is your philosophical view on, are you clean by holding on to your RECs, or are you still clean by selling your RECs?
If you generate them, you're green. I don't think you become ungreen by selling them.
But are you enabling a pollutant to continue polluting? To me, that's more important to me than whether we're considered.
Right, so I think the value judgment comes in to whom or into which market we sell our RECs. And do we have that flexibility? Because I saw the Northeast look hot.
You have some flexibility as a seller and a buyer. I've heard of a community that's well-regarded, and their greenness comes from their ability to sell their credits in a high-demand market and then goes buy credits in a cheaper market, and they still claim their greenness.
It's like stocks. It's like stocks, it happens all the time.
So
It's not a bad idea.
So my point in the presentation is to give you this information, we've got the data, and have a conversation. So I'm not coming to you with a recommendation because I think the conversation, it's much deeper than a dollars and cents conversation.
Community weigh in. I mean,
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this would be something I would hope we would put out there and we would have a more robust discussion around it. I don't think we are making any decisions tonight. But, I mean, well, I think we all get it. Do we, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, come on up.
So I guess the question I have.
And can you say your name?
Anthony Walking. The question I have related to this would be, what do we do with the proceeds from selling the wrecks? Does that go back into the community to where it supports more solar? That frees us from potentially having to sell wrecks in the future? So that's my question.
Certainly internally, we're having a conversation, and this isn't necessarily, I don't want you to take my next comments as something planned in the works, but to your point, I think just sort of gives us some insights as what we could do. We talked about it internally, what we could do the money with, and obviously we want to make investments in a similar profile. So put it back in our electricity, and there are things that we could consider. Batteries for storage, solar, more solar. So those are things that could be done to improve or the reliability of the grid or access to store and produce energy locally and distribute it locally. And those are, again, some ideas. It's not something that's written in a plan or that by any means, it's far from a recommendation to council.
And I think to that point, I mean, this council does have a precedent for things like when we did the lodging tax. We committed to that money going back into the community to, support sidewalks and other kinds of development things. So I do agree if we went down this route with what Josue is saying, that we would want this to turn into supporting green energy. But I think that's part of the discussion. Megan?
Megan Bachman, Yellow Springs News. Just while we're throwing out ideas, another one could be possibly relief for the utility bill ratepayers that have actually paid increased rates for solar.
Yep. Lisa?
Oh, go ahead, Josue, if you wanted to say something.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I heard it right. Relief for the ratepayers?
Lower rates.
Right.
To lower overall rates, or those that are new residential solar customers?
Overall
Okay.
rates, yeah. Lisa?
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, it's kind of a multi-layer philosophical consideration, because given the dilemmas that we face with infrastructure costs, it almost puts us in a position where, as we sell them, if they go to polluters, which affects our whole world, right? You have to think big. But on the other hand, with the proceeds, we could improve our local experience. So it's very difficult. And then I just want to clarify that I understand correctly the possible transactions that we could, for example, sell to someplace where they have a high renewable energy credit price, and then buy from others that are lower than our current one.
Correct.
Where we're then taking renewable energy credits away from, the red, or what is it, ERCOT one.
Like California can produce a lot of wind and solar, right?
Yeah.
Arizona, and so the market
Yeah,
there is
that's the
different
least,
from.
97 cents. So you can do that, but it is like then trading.
It is
We'd have to really, just as we've looked at our other kinds of investments,
Yeah.
we'd have to really be clever.
So are we sort of, I mean, we're not like necessarily deciding exactly right now, but it sounds like there's a great deal of interest in like keeping it in a closed system. In other words, it stays with the electric utilities. In other words, we're not gonna go out and buy unless it's an electric vehicle, buy a new vehicle for the village or anything like that. So, you know, it's generated by the electrical grid, as it were, and it comes back into there, whether it's utility reduction, but it's still staying with the electricity rates and the grid somehow.
Right, one of the things that we have to consider is our obligation to the enterprises. This is an enterprise-specific activity, and the enterprises have to be self-sustaining in the right. So like, we wouldn't take money from one enterprise and put it in another enterprise. The money the economic opportunity here lies in the contracts that the electric utility, as an enterprise fund, has engaged in long term. So we made these contracts and we save money by entering these long contracts. That's the economic opportunity. If you think of that as an option, then we're cashing out that option by selling it to someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Condense.
But I think also related to what you're saying, Kevin, I mean, there's, I think, a legitimate argument for, should these funds go to burying lines, you know, which ultimately, like, you know, helps us to continue to deliver renewable energy and saves a lot of costs. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of different considerations about what the implications.
Right, and along those lines, I just want to point out that our 11 cents per kilowatt hour is below the Ohio average. So from a utility rate, the electric rate is not as burdensome as some of our other costs. So electric rate is very competitive. And I'm happy to share the reports from the AMP community on these rates.
So what are next steps?
Well, so actually, I want to hear from two more people and then that. So Laura, it seemed like you wanted to maybe say something?
No.
Not at this point?
I don't have any answers. I mean, I'm inclined to like the idea of staying green and making money at the same time.
Right.
So you can sleep good at night.
That's a good
So-
idea.
Yeah.
Let's do
It
that.
seems
And
like a
then-
win-win if there's a big spread.
Right. And then, Johnny, do you want to say something about this? Because I know, like, you know, you've been part of this, like, this has been our sort of policy to not sell our recs.
Yeah, so it's a shock to me when Josue asked me about this, and I actually emailed John Courtney, and he's like, hello, what's going on? And so it is a shock to me. I know the Energy Board was dead against selling RECs because we're green. We don't want to not be green by selling it to somebody that's polluting the air. We want to make it, that's what Yellow Springs is about. One of the communities that everybody here knows is Oberlin. Oberlin's very green, but they produce a lot of green and they sell it on the market for cheaper green. They're still green, but they sell all their high-priced green to somebody that's not as green. So, I mean, I'm with Laura, I'm with Josue. If it's about making money and easing some of the infrastructure on the electric system, whether we put in more solar to reduce more cost and more peak shaving, or we start putting lines underground, we know we're green, but do we want to enable other people not to be green? And with it, I don't know which way the House is going right now with the green and non-green, the nuclear and non-nuclear. I was hoping that they was going to weigh to where they was going to start going green, which would make everybody come up to our standards. I mean, we're setting a standard right now. So I would like to see the final result to see, but I agree with going back into putting in more solar to help reduce the cost of what's going on. So solar is going to be the way to go. Battery backup is another way to go. We can put battery backup on our system now to be able to help carry that peak a little bit further into the evening times and all that. So I think it's something to explore, but at the end of the day, we got to figure out whether we're green because we want to be green and help the environment, or if it's about squeaking out that little bit of money to help us financially.
Well, 100,000 a year is not a little bit, but yeah.
Well,
Thanks.
that's Johnny Burns.
Yes. But yeah, I appreciate that. So let's get to Mary Ann's question. What are next steps? Because, you know, I do want this to be a conversation where people understand that we're going to look at this seriously. And I think we have to. You know, this is why I wanted this to be brought forward. So what do you propose, Josue? What are our next steps?
Well, we can go to the broker and ask for more fixed pricing. We can have community engagement to get feedback from folks. We can have a structured conversation with council and community members or other folks who served in other commissions like the Energy Board to have a constructive conversation about this. So I see that being a multi-pronged approach. There's some work for us to do on the economic sides, get a firmer price. And this doesn't have to be all or nothing. You know, there could be something in the middle. And then there's that community engagement piece, because as this is a financial transaction, it is also a community transaction. This is like Johnny said it well. We're setting the standards. We're a leader in the community. We are the greenest community in the AMP community, the AMP Association. That's a high standard to set. And so, if we look to move out of that position, I think it needs to be an informed decision.
So, you know, I would submit that polluters is probably not the best term. I mean, I think it's all relative.
Right, I not just piggyback on.
Right. No, I'm saying, so, yeah. So I think the argument should not be presented that we're enabling polluters. There are folks, there are industries, entities that are trying, that just aren't as green as we are. And so we're helping them.
Okay,
So-
I'm going to say we're past time. We still have another thing to talk about, and I feel like we have raised the kind of issues that at this point need to be raised, and I would like to suggest we move on and task Josue with doing the follow-up, as you suggested.
Yep, agreed.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I'm not gonna say it.
So, good discussion. Thank you. This is, I mean, to me, this is exactly the kind of stuff we have to bring forward, and we have to, you know, make policy decisions on. And the good news is, the next topic, I don't think there's much discussion, because at our retreat, no one had any comments about our current rules and procedures, so I don't have anything to talk about here. So I don't know.
I have one thing.
Yes.
And I've wanted this since I was village manager, and that is when people come up to speak, unless we know them, and that means Judy Kintner gets to decide if we know them, in the sense of, do we know their address? Like, when somebody comes up to speak, like this gentleman here, I don't know if he's a village resident or he runs this energy company in Xenia and has some, has some background, I can elaborate. Yeah.
Actually,
Well, it
we
just
know his
helps-
address because there's a letter in the packet, but yes.
Well, it
But yeah.
just helps me to know the perspective from which somebody, are you speaking as a village resident? Are you speaking as a different concern, different perspective?
So you're saying name and address?
Unless, I don't want Megan to have to give her address every time she stands up.
Right.
Like, so if they're a frequent flyer, we know their address. It's in our record, like, and we know them.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't necessarily
Ju-
have to be the address, but I like the
Or
idea.
the
Are you a village
resident,
resident?
village
Resident,
are you
Or are
village
you
resident?
speaking as
Yeah.
a business owner or
Yeah,
whatever?
right.
The affiliation.
Yeah.
Cool. So, does that require an amendment to our rules and procedures?
You guys normally approve your rules and procedures every time there's a new council. So I can add that to the procedure and send it around. Because you would need to approve rules and procedures even if we didn't change anything. So
Okay.
why don't I do that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Sounds good. Good
See?
idea.
We just cut 15 minutes off the agenda. All right. Yes, Megan.
Well, Megan was
Because
affected.
in the retreat packet, was that the current procedures? Because it says from 2016. Is that what you were looking at? Because Notably, there were the additions from last March, February, March time period around clapping and signs, so I just want to make sure what you're
The packet does have a
No, I've got
resolution.
2018-02 here.
Okay, so you have multiple ones?
So the resolution is 2018, and then there's an attachment that's dated February 1, 2016.
Okay.
Did we actually change the rules formally when all that was going on
We
with
did.
clapping?
You did.
Good. You know, we clap all the time. We clapped today,
Well,
a bunch.
yeah, but that's different than, I think it's a terrible idea for you. Yeah! I mean, that's a different kind of clapping than, we'd like to honor such and so. When there's a controversy, that was the objection to the clapping, was that it had a chilling effect on the other person's perspective. I can clarify that.
Yes.
Chilling clapping will not be tolerated. Happy clapping would be tolerated. Change that.
Okay, so now we're talking about the ones that were passed. I do have a comment, and that's that,
Yep.
First of all, council did say that they would revisit that. It kind of came out of a very heated period at the beginning of last year, and then the normalcy of a few scattered individuals kind of came back. So I do believe it is actually not in line with the First Amendment. Specifically, the signs is very clear that that cannot be prohibited. So I would ask that you revisit that, as well as clapping in support of good things, but not when council's being criticized. I would say that that's also not quite fair to really, the idea of really hearing from citizens. So just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Okay, so it sounds like we will bring back a revised version.
Yep.
And we can discuss clapping, snapping, and sign waving. Yeah, I don't have a strong feeling either way, I'll just say, so, yeah. So, all right, so let's make sure that's on the agenda for February 3rd. Okay, manager's report.
All right, thank you, Brian. I'll start with project updates. We have tree trimming work going on. Gray's Tree Service will begin trimming on the road right away on January 21st. That's today. Arbor Care will begin trimming around the power lines on January 22nd. Vectren and Miller Pipeline continue working for another 2 weeks on Xenia Avenue. Then they'll head over to East South College for additional work. Midwest is still in town, changing out poles. So is AT&T on Spillane Road. Ellis Pond project will begin the bridge assessment and the clearing of the site this week. We got some storm sewer updates on at Dayton and North Walnut. If you recall, I started to share one of my nightmares for 2020, and that was the collapse of this laid-up limestone sewer. That has happened. It created a sinkhole in the area behind the laundromat. This will require rewriting of the lines as commercial properties have been allowed to build directly above this outdated storm sewer. Just a note on that, we've got several properties in town that have exceeded their property lines or are built onto either the public right-of-ways or so over some of our key infrastructure. The initial estimate of rerouting the sewer line is estimated at $336,000. This expense has not been budgeted. As you're aware, we do not have a dedicated revenue line for sewer services. Hence, this expense will be covered from general funds. I wanna recognize and appreciate the comment made by Mary Ann on considering a dedicated budget line for stormwater management. The Vernay cleanup, the update here is that we have, that Vernay and TRC provided will be on site at the end of January for boring samples around these existing utilities to test for contaminants. This is done at the request of the village administration with added support from the US EPA. We're also scheduled to have a meeting with the EPA on January 29th, where we will discuss the memos recently shared with council and the timeline for 2020 regarding the community meeting with residents and the statement of basis. As a response to the inquiries around our water quality and testing, I've included the Following the report, constituent and stakeholders have asked about the village water quality and testing of our water source. We'll release a water quality report around June, July that will cover the water quality measures for the 2019 year. We also want to inform our stakeholders that we are adding 3 additional testing wells to our water system. These 3 wells will allow us to expand our testing range and enhance our early testing capability. Attached to this report is the water source and distribution testing schedule provided by the EPA. These are the requirements set by the EPA. We exceed these testing requirements by conducting our own test. So that schedule is provided for your reference. A few administrative updates. On January 22nd, I will lead a community conversation sponsored by the McKee Association on key village infrastructure projects, discuss remediations plans for the former Renee Laboratories property, and review the Yellow Springs Comprehensive Land Use Plan process. I will also be inviting all those members to attend our open house on the 23rd. We have closed the books for 2019. I want to thank Colleen and her team for them tirelessly working to get this done, and I've included the unaudited financial reports in this council packet. We'll begin our auditing process and expect to have report in Q2 of 2020, and that's the end of Q2. Staff retreat, we held the staff retreat on January 8th. Management met at the Lewis Jackson Regional Airport to plan for 2020. Staff presented on government operations for 2019 at the council retreat held on January 15. And during that time, staff also presented on operational goals for 2020. State capital requests for 2020, we have submitted through the following 3 capital projects for funding consideration. That's the sinkhole. This is an emergency line replacement, a sinkhole on old limestone drains owned by the village running underneath commercial property. We've also submitted a request for replacement of our water meter systems. I mentioned earlier that Travis and Rose read 2,200 meters a month by hand. So a new meter system will replace current manual reading function to a system that operates through broadband connection and can be read in real time. System will allow for early detection of water leaks and lead to better management of critical water source resources. Community broadband is the 3rd project we submitted. This is to build a municipal broadband utility owned and managed by the village of Yellow Springs that delivers a better internet experience for residents and businesses in the village. The village's high-speed fiber network will offer an unprecedented level of internet service to the residents with a gigabyte fiber connection to every home and business and spark economic development in the village and surrounding area. Listed below are the project request amount. We wanted to be competitive, so we're requesting 50% match. If any one of those comes through, that will be a significant assistance to villages achieving its economic goals and meeting financial goals as well, particularly because there's one of these that we must do, that being the sinkhole repair. We will host an open house on the comprehensive land use plan on January 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Mills Lawn Auditorium or Gym. We want your input. Please come and participate in updating our comprehensive land use for the village. We continue to look to engage residents on the comp plan. In that effort, we have a dedicated site to provide updates and solicit feedback from residents and stakeholders. Please visit our website for updates and reports, and that's www.sustainableyellowsprings.com. And I've included a postcard image of that announcement. I wanna remind council members that in your packet is the quarterly financial report, and I asked if we could have your approval of that quarterly financial report at this meeting. I also want to take time to recognize the effort of Channel 5 and improving the technology. You will see in front of you that you now have these HDMI cables, so you could screen anything on your laptop up on our monitors. So those are the HDMI. So thank you, Sean.
Noticed that. Didn't know it was for.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the quarterly financials.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
I'm sorry, one more thing. In your packet is also the utility roundup program. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to congratulate the team on achieving 23% participation rate on the customer. That's 422 residents, and they've contributed $5,923.55. So we have a total fund balance of $7,840.13. We've helped 25 families in the village keep their utilities on
And stay on.
and stay on.
Happy clapping?
Yes. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
All right, Judy?
I'll just highlight that I want to acknowledge Andy Karen, who's the new YSPD records person. I thought no one on earth could replace Josh Knapp, but Andy is doing a fantastic job, so I really want to acknowledge that. And then just Youth Center, if you bought too much fruit, apples, oranges, anything like that, Youth Center can always use your healthy food donations, maybe something you can't leave at the food pantry because it may be perishable, will be happily eaten by very hungry teenager type people.
Do they have a refrigerator or microwave or?
They have microwaves.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, may I add to this? The water fountain. We've recognized the water fountain downstairs is broken, and we're working expeditiously to replace that with a new and updated model. So more to come.
That you can put your water bottle in?
Yes.
It tells you how many.
Your hydro
bottles.
flask? Okay, great. Any highlights from boards and commissions? Okay. Future agenda items. I will start by saying that, let's have Rex, discussion on the 18th, because I think there's a lot on the 3rd already. We have added the tap fee request to the 3rd, from Home Inc. We will be having an executive session, for the evaluation of employees.
6 o'clock or 6:30?
6 o'clock.
Okay.
Six?
6, yes. And so we don't have to be mysterious about that. That is to finalize the goals for Judy and Josue, which we will then discuss and present at a public meeting. And we've already got rules and procedures on there. We will at least have a document about council assignments with boards and commissions. I don't know that there'll be discussion, but we want to make sure that that's in the packet. Everything else I see on here looks good. Anything else?
How would we go about considering a budget line item for stormwater management? And whether or not we have a fee for that, that would be a separate issue, but who would, we go to the finance committee to think about that, or how would we?
I think it depends on where we want to, how we want to finance this budget line item. If it's a revenue line and an expense line, I think that will require conversation, council to make the decision on how we allocate that revenue line. That revenue line could be an additional service charge, and we can determine how to implement that. If it's if we're dedicating revenue from a general fund, that's an administrative action, and Colleen is here, maybe she can touch base on that. But those would be two ways that I can readily identify that will.
Well, I guess I'd like to suggest that staff discuss that and come back to council with a recommendation.
And I actually like your idea of the Finance Advisory Committee, vetting that a little bit before it comes to council. I mean,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
agree.
because, I mean, that was one of the things we said that the Finance Advisory Committee would do, is look at utility rates.
Also
So,
reciprocity,
yes,
to bring that forward into a council and public conversation.
yep. Yeah, so I mean, and again, in the spirit of kind of piloting some of that, you know, pre-vetting, to, you know, kind of think about how to present it to council.
Yeah.
I think that would be good, you know, so staff should talk about it, and then, yes.
I think when we get I think we'll also give more information when we get the presentation from Choice One on our storm study that we've been doing. So they may have some other ideas, then we can work with staff and them together before we bring it to council.
Okay.
Thank you, John, that sounds good. Also,
So put that as a, you know, like kind of,
Placeholder, maybe March
Placeholder.
2nd?
sure. Okay.
the other, I know at our work session, we talked about some of the legislation we wanted to bring around stormwater management, and that's these sump pumps. You know, that's
Yeah.
part of the strategy as well, managing storm. Planning Commission received a report on the subdivisions and how to account for the water that's displaced through new development. So Planning Commission has that work before them. So there are these other conversations that are taking place, or other items that at some point need to come together and.
Well, it's gonna rear its head, ugly or not, when we talk about goals next time.
Okay.
So that will be a start.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
I guess maybe this is something that I just talked to Josue and Colleen about, but it's about a supplemental ordinance so that the money that was from the revolving loan fund never made it into the 2020 budget.
Right.
It's sitting still
It's in the fund balance.
in the fund balance, and I would like to get that moved over so that we can begin to work on that with the Development Corporation.
Okay. Could it wait until the supplemental, or
It
you want it
can.
prior to?
Yeah, so can I just request that within the
Yes.
next supplemental?
Yes, so we can add it.
That's 35,000?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
A couple quick things. To protect the skies, in the report, Johnny put the photos of the pole switch out, and if you look at these show you how much higher these poles are into the sky view. And it's just incredible, I think. And I feel the impact greatly, because I enjoy the beauty of the sky, and now I get to look at poles. I'm just saying, you can see it right there. And I don't know if we have any control over that whatsoever, or it's totally out of our control. But it seems like we ought to have some control since it's in the right-of-way. So I'll just mention that, I don't need an answer, but then, has the tree committee, I noticed, so the tree trimming started on the right-of-ways, the road right-of-ways. Those are particularly visible to the public, and they can be particularly ugly if the trimming is done in a bad way, and it's not good for the trees. So, do they have an arborist graze tree service?
We outsource,
They do great. So I hope that it's done in a sensitive way to the trees and, you know, and that usually also means it'll be attractive. Thank you.
I do have a suggestion about the goals, because that will come up at our next meeting.
Yes.
That maybe all of us, well, first of all, we get a electronic copy of the goal
Yes.
statement, and that any kind of comments that we want to put in, we send to
Me,
you,
yes.
and then we have that. And I'd be happy to, I'd like to tweak that with you before the meeting, if that.
Sounds good? Yeah, and thanks for highlighting that. Yeah, please, I will send you guys a version that you can edit. It's a Word doc. And then, yeah, we will, we'll compile and have that in the packet. So, okay.
All right.
Great. All right, you guys, allow me to finish the meeting on time, 1 minute early. So I will entertain a motion. Oh, Chief Carlson.
There it goes.
I sit through these and enjoy it.
Yes.
I'm only gonna be about 10 minutes. No, I'm kidding. I wanted to publicly acknowledge and thank Colleen for the difficult work that her department has accomplished since we lost Susie. And it's been amazing. Colleen and her small staff have taken over and done the work of an additional full-time, long-time Yellow Springs Village person. And I just want to acknowledge that, because they have really worked long days, long hours, and thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for,
you.
yeah, thank you, Chief. Okay.
And thank you to Casey and Nathan Lee. They're the two downstairs that I couldn't do without them.
Definitely. And you too, Colleen. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, thanks, everyone.
Hey, Lisa, I want to give this to you, and you can raise it with the